This podcast is part of the Everyday Heroes Podcast Network, the network for first responders and those who support them.
Disclaimer. All views expressed on What Makes Us Fire are solely those of the person or persons giving them. What Makes Us Fire does not represent or claim to represent any particular city or fire department, and therefore make the claim that all views and standpoints are affiliated with What Makes Us Fire and with What Makes Us Fire only. Any mention of certain fire departments or cities within the interviews are solely for informational and opinion-based dialogue. In short, if you have a problem with what's published, just say something about it and don't be a Richard.
What is up, What Makes Us Fire family? This is Josh, your host of the What Makes Us Fire podcast, founder of the What Makes Us Fire nonprofit foundation. Thank you for joining us today on the show. Before we get started, I want to take a minute to say thank you to everybody who has reached out to me during a depressive episode of my life. I've been going through some pretty hard times, and there have been a lot of you out there that have reached out and had shown concern, and it does not go unappreciated. Thank you. And saying all that, my guest today is a pretty awesome dude. Mr. Jerry Sanford, a retired New York City firefighter. He and his lady friend co-authored a book called It Started With a Helmet. Jerry has an extensive history in the fire department and in one of the world's most prestigious fire departments there is out there, the New York City Fire Department. Jerry tells us his stories. And when I say he tells us his stories, he tells us his stories. Any of you guys know the old hat that once you get started talking, they don't stop? But everything they say is mesmerizing, catching. Yeah, that's Jerry. I'm going to let him do a lot of the talking. Takes us through what it was like growing up, what it was like going through the FDNY, and his struggles with addiction. Being 83 years old, he comes from a time where you just don't talk about your struggles. You don't ask for help. Jerry did. Take a listen. This man's got something to say. So without further ado, What Makes Us Fire family, please help me welcome Mr. Jerry Sanford, co-author of It Started With a Helmet. I'm not all that professional when it comes to the whole podcast stuff. I will be throwing a pinch of tobacco in at some point here shortly. I have a little vape, and if you need to take a break to go take a piss or anything like that, please let me know. But yeah, Jerry, brother.
Okay. Josh, brother, happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show, man. I really do appreciate you being here on the What Makes Us Fire podcast. It's interesting because I would say you are probably the oldest guest I've had on the show so far, and the oldest firefighter that I've had on the show so far. I'm not gonna say retired firefighter or anything else. Yeah, retired is a term, but we're always firefighters through and through.
Always in the job.
Always in the job. You know,
Yep.
Somebody's always asking us a question. Somebody's always asking our advice. It happens that way.
Yes.
So it's really awesome to have you on the show because your lady put a book out.
Correct.
It started with a helmet,
Right.
and it started taking off.
There it is. There it is.
It started with a helmet. Yeah. So it was really cool because now I didn't know about the book until I saw you on social media.
Right.
And what you were doing on social media and how you were doing it was actually very, very cool, very interesting, very informative. And you don't see many people that go live on their social media platforms set up the way you do. It's very interesting. It's very interactive. You almost get pulled into what you're doing, and it's refreshing to see people kind of be a little bit more real on their social media. So I reached out to you, right?
Yes.
Actually, one of my board members with the nonprofit actually said, you need to get this guy on the show. And I said, that would be amazing. Who the hell is he? No offense. I had no idea who you were until social media. Now, of course, I know all New York City firefighters think they're God's gift to firefighting. Hopefully that's not the case with you.
No,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it is a pretty prestigious thing to be a former New York City firefighter. That's kind of like the pinnacle of firefighting here in the U.S. So I reached out to you. I said, hey, I have a podcast. Love to have you on the show. You said, what's it about? I said, you and mental health within civil service realm. And you said, fuck yeah, let's do it. There was no question. And yeah, I think being a firefighter as well and reaching out to another firefighter, it actually made it a little bit easier for you to just say, yeah, sure, why not, right? Because I would do the same thing for a brother firefighter. I think we all would. So I reached out to you. You said yes. I think maybe we had a 15, 20-minute conversation prior to all this. I actually caught you out to dinner. You're at dinner at lunch. And we just talked for about 15, 20 minutes. And now here we are. So everybody listening, everybody out there on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, whatever platform you're listening on, I don't know this man. I know his name's Jerry, and I know him and Miss Chris wrote a book called It Started with a Helmet.
Right.
We shared a little bit about what we're going to talk about, but literally 15 minutes. So I don't know this man, which makes this so much better, in my opinion, because I'm going to be asking you questions that I have no idea. You have no idea what I'm going to be asking you. And I'm getting to know you.
Right.
And while I'm getting to know you, the audience is getting to know you. They're not pre-scripted questions.
Sure.
I want to ask real quick, what the hell prompted you to say yes to be on the podcast?
Well, it's always great to connect with a brother, and Chris had told me about you, and when you called, I saw my phone. I was like, hey, hon, it's Josh. And so I immediately got up from the table and went outside the restaurant, and we had our conversation. But, PTSD, I've worked with a lot of guys over the years. I saw a whole lot myself up in 9/11 and through my over 50 years of service in the helping people business, being a firefighter. And I just felt that if I can help anybody out there, I'd be happy to speak to you. So that's why I immediately said yes.
Well, that's a very simple answer, and thank you. It says something about your character, right? Kind of that whole wanting to help people doesn't go away. I don't think it ever will.
No.
Well, I do appreciate you saying yes to coming on the show. That's how we met. I don't know if you got to see a little bit of our content here, what we're doing here at What Makes Us Fire. Like I said, we're very mental health forward. We want to kill the stigma that is talking about mental health, making the uncomfortable conversation not so fucking uncomfortable, because it doesn't need to be uncomfortable.
No.
And, just basically starting our conversation, making it easier to talk about. That way the issues that we're dealing with become easy to deal with. In saying all that, I want to take it back, Jerry. I want to know where you came from. Now, I don't want to know, from your career on. I want to know when baby Jerry, before he had hair growing in funny places, all the way up to kind of where you're at now. Give us like a summary of how you grew up, what your life was like, all the way up to kind of where you're at now, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. I was born and raised on Staten Island. That's one of the 5 boroughs that consists of New York City. It was kind of different from the other boroughs because back when I was a child, the only way you got to Staten Island was the Staten Island Ferry or the Brooklyn Ferry. But there were 3 bridges that linked Staten Island to New Jersey. But there was no bridge that ran to Manhattan or to Brooklyn, and we were kind of the farm folks. They used to make fun of us. You came from Staten Island. And it was a great time to grow up, Josh. We had woods. This was all before the Verrazano Bridge, which I'll get into later on, was even constructed. Everybody knew each other. If you got in trouble, you got as soon as you got home, your mother and father knew that you did something because, we were a very tight community back then. It was great. Everybody in my graduation class from high school, I think we had 20 kids. That was it.
Wow.
And it's a little small, PS-48 in Concord on Staten Island. And everybody knew each other. And it was a great way. We grew up in a beautiful time. Beautiful time. Everybody knew each other. And then I graduated high school. I went to a technical school, McKee Vocational and Technical School. All my friends went to an academic school. But my dad must have figured that he wanted me to learn a trade. So this is a little ironic. So I took electricity for 3.5 years in McKee High School. And when I graduated in the summer of 1955, was very union organized and very Italian. My last name didn't end in an I, an O, or anything like that. In New York, so I went out and I tried to get a job, and they looked at me. What's your last name? Sanford. You spell that Sanford? Yeah, okay, kid. We'll get back to you. So, so months went by, and then one day my father came home. He was a banker, worked for Harmony Trust Company before it merged with JP Morgan.
Oh, wow.
Guess what? Monday, you going to work? I said, great. Where am I going? I need my tools. He said, no. He said, I got you a job in Bankers Trust Company. I said, Bankers Trust Company? What the hell am I going to work in a bank? I thought you wanted me to be an electrician. Well, that was the end of that. So I went to work. Gosh, so I went to work, and here I am with adding machines. This is before a computer that we knew what computers are today. This was in the 50s. So
you didn't have like an Atticus?
Yeah, oh yeah. So in 1955, I joined the Navy Reserve, and when I graduated high school in the following November of 1956, I was activated and went away in the Navy. And I served for 2 years on the radar picket ship USS Vigil, based out of Davisville, Rhode Island. And it wasn't romantic sea-going. I'm going to the Med. I'm going to go to Spain and Portugal. No. That wasn't happening. You guys don't remember, but that was during the Cold War. The Russians are coming. And they outfitted these old World War II freighters with all kind of sophisticated radar gear on top of them. And they put 8 of them on the East Coast and 8 of them on the West Coast. And every plane leaving the country and every plane coming back into the country, you had to report to one of these ships. Anyway, I did that romantically. It was the only place I got to was Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. In fact, I found a couple of old pictures of me in Havana, Cuba, in the Hotel Nacional. This is when Batista was still the president of Cuba, and Castro was up in the mountains, organized his revolution.
Right.
So anyway, I bounced around the Navy. I got out in '58, and I got married in 1959. I was 20 years old. Imagine that. Had been in the Navy, got out, never had a car. People ask me what was my first car. I said it was green and white, and they ran every 20 to 25 minutes along Richmond Road. The 108, the 117, the 113, and I got a bus. And then I took the bus to my yachts. I had all kind of yachts. They were called the Staten Island Ferry. So, so anyway, that was it. I married Barbara in 1959, and I went back to Wall Street, worked in a brokerage house, and then one day a man came in, and he was a New York City firefighter. And I got to be good friends with him. His name was Jimmy Rulin. And he said, Wall Street back in the 50s were, in the 60s, they were undergoing some, So I started taking civil service tests. That's what you did.
Mm-hmm.
In many other big cities, you take a test. It's not that your Uncle Louie's grandfather, or nephew, you had to take a test.
Right.
So I test for New York City police officer. I didn't want to be a cop. Oh, but I'm getting back to Jimmy. So how did I get the firefighter bug? A couple of nights I rode with him on his apparatus. It was like a bread truck. It was called the Squad, and we ran all over Lower Manhattan. And boy, what a rush that was.
How did? I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick.
Go ahead.
And I wish Jimmy was here to answer this question. I wonder what it was to possess him to basically put this kid underneath his wing, right? You, and kind of show him around. Like, what was it that possessed him to say, "Hey, come check it out"?
Yeah.
See what we do.
I don't know. He's gone now about 5 years, Jimmy. But I don't know why. But he did, and he encouraged me to take the test. Anyway, I did, and I passed the police. I got higher on the police exam than I did on the fire. So the cops called me in 1965, and the starting salary for a New York City patrolman, 1965, was $7,032.
A year.
A year.
Wow.
And Barbara and I, we had Glenn. He was a baby, and we had just bought a house. I don't know how I did it, but I was making a lot of overtime money on Wall Street. So I took about a $4,000 to $5,000 pay cut down to 7,032, and I left Wall Street, and I became a New York City police officer. Well,
I'm sorry. I'm
No, go ahead.
No. I'm just saying. I'm sorry you became a police officer.
Oh.
I'm. My condolences to you.
Oh my God. So anyway, there I am, just about making the weight. You had to be 140 pounds. So I was drinking milkshakes, eating bananas, all that stuff. Anyway, I passed the medical and the physical, and this is in the book, but I went to police headquarters to get sworn in, and I must have been white as a sheet, Josh, because I went into the men's room to take a leak, and the stall next to me is this old hairbag detective with a big cigar in his mouth, blowing smoke all over the place. And he looks at me and says, "What's the matter, kid? Getting sworn in?" I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "This is the greatest job in the world." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What'd you do before?" I said, "Just left Wall Street." "Wall Street? That's going down the tube." He said, "This is the greatest job in the world." He said, "You know what, kid? The eagle shits every 2 weeks." I'm thinking, what the hell? Anyway, I get sworn in, and what he meant was, no matter how bad the city was going, you got paid every 2 weeks. And I remembered that. So every 2 weeks, I got a check. Anyway, I went to the police academy and graduated, and I was assigned to the 7th Precinct on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And here I am, an Irish white kid from Staten Island, and I get put in an all-Jewish Puerto Rican precinct. Talk about a culture shock, Josh. Culture shock.
Sir. Yes, sir.
I'm like, what the hell? I don't understand the English. I don't understand the Spanish. But I tell you what, being a policeman back in those days, from 1965 to 1968, it taught me how we treat people. And I saw a lot of bad things that the cops did. I mean, I wasn't a part of that, Josh. I just, I wanted to be a firefighter, but being a police officer, chasing you, giving you a summons, a parking ticket, what the hell? I mean, and then locking you up. If you went to a family dispute, either the husband liked you or the wife hated you, or vice versa, because you're going to lock up somebody,
Right.
And somebody just thought, So, and I had a few arrests, a couple of funny things, but the idea was I just couldn't wait for the fire department to call me. And finally, in June of 1968, I was called to the New York City Fire Department, the best move I have ever made in my life, and I would do it again in a New York moment.
Best part of the story right here. Best part of the story coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, open your ears. Best part of the story coming up.
So and then it's funny, the instructor, he was built like a fire hydrant, and he was a little squat, a little short man, and we called him the Bear. He looked like a bear, hair all over him, and he hated ex-cops. So that was right up my alley. Hated us.
Oh, that's awesome.
If the rest of the troops ran 8 times around the track, I ran 16 times around the track. And it was about 12 or 13 of us, ex-cops. We had extra homework. He broke our balls. And it was the summer. The summer in New York City at the Rock is probably like put yourself in the Sahara Desert, hot as the bastard, the concrete, the asphalt, the whole thing. But I got through it. And this is a funny thing I want to tell you. So now we get our assignments, and we're all in a room, and I look up, and it says Sanford, ladder 23. I'm thinking, wow, this is how naive I am, Josh. Gee, that's not too bad. 23rd Street in Manhattan. And I live on Staten Island. Well, that's not going to be too bad of a commute. So I guess I hollered, hey, I'm going to 23rd Street, 23 truck. And the lieutenant, now everybody's cracking up. They said, hey, kid, 23 truck is 139th Street in Harlem. I said, Harlem? Are you shitting me? Well, they broke my you-know-what. So I got assigned to ladder 23 in quarters with engine 80 at 139th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, across the street from CCNY. Well, let me tell you, it would take me 2 to 2.5 hours each way to get to Harlem. But I worked with some guys, and I was the first probie in 9 years to go to ladder 23.
Oh, wow.
So they were all ready for me. They were ready to break my chops. And I was 30 years old. 30.
Oh, man, you started a little late.
I did. I didn't go on the police department until I was 27.
Wow.
And I had a house, I had a baby, and I was married. I wasn't living with mom and pop, but I was one of the few married guys in the police academy. So anyway, I get assigned to ladder 23 in Harlem, and I worked with some fantastic firemen. White, black, didn't matter. We were all brothers. Didn't matter what color you were, and it was, don't forget, Harlem was all black. And made great friendships up there, taught the job. I mean, you could forget about what you learned on the Rock. You were going to a firehouse. I mean, in fact, it's funny, the Scott masks just came into the job around that time, a little before that. And they had MSAs before that. And I was the kid from probie school, and we had the masks on the rig. And I mean, the firemen, we'd pull up to a job, the flames are blowing out the window. I didn't have time to grab the mask because I was with the officer, and I had the hook in a can and the forcible entry team, and in we'd go. And it wasn't until, we drilled with the mask, but I mean, they were leather lung firemen up there. I mean, they were real old school. They just ran in, ran up, made a grab, helped the engine stretch in, put out the fires. And I went to a lot of fires up in Harlem when I was there.
That was during the 70s, huh?
I got there in 68.
Oh, in 68. Okay.
68 till about 74. And that's part of what we call the war years. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Yes, I've heard about it. That's when Harlem, and that's when a lot of, that was right after the the civil rights movement.
Yep.
And people in Harlem started recognizing that they were put in Harlem for a purpose, and so they wanted some change, and so they started burning buildings. They started creating chaos. Awesome. Yes, yeah, I am familiar.
Awesome was big back then, Josh. And like I said, we had one funny story that I like to share is one day, who can take more smoke? I can take more smoke than you. Oh yeah, you're full of shit. I can take more smoke. Yeah, well, let's go outside and we'll prove who can take it. I think it was Quigley and Dumas. I remember those two doofuses, but doing crazy. And so outside on the apparatus floor in the corner was this little room, and it was a toilet. That was it. All it had was a bowl, nothing else, no sink. So you just went in, and so they got a pail, Josh, and they crumpled up newspaper and a couple of rags, and they put it in the pail, and they set it on fire. And they walked, the two of these guys could just about fit in this room, this little toilet. And the smoke is pouring out, and they closed the door. Well, one of us, I forget who it was, got a nail and a hammer, and we nailed the door closed, nailed it shut. And all you can hear is these babies, these guys crying. The smoke is pouring out from underneath around the lip of the door and all. And we let them in there, I don't know, maybe five, not even 10 minutes, because it's just a small little thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we opened them up, and they came rolling out and smoking all and chasing us all over the engine and the truck. We were all in on it, and up the stairs. And then we had poles back then. They hadn't taken the poles out yet. So but that was one of the funniest incidents with these guys saying how brave and.
I tell you what, anything like that happened today, you would be written up in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Especially now that we're more aware about the carcinogen and everything.
Oh, yeah.
My God. But I tell you what, I would have loved to be a part of that. I would have loved to be a part of that.
Yeah, that was one of my great memories of people ask about that, and it's a great story. And when I was there only, I don't know, 2-3 weeks on a run, Carl Taylor, he was a giant of a man. He was our tillerman in the groups I worked in. Come on, kid, get in the tiller. And I'm looking up, it's like you had to climb up like 2.5 stories to get into the tiller. And back those days, nothing was covered, Josh. Everything was open, with the officer and the chauffeur drove. It was there. There was nothing over there. And the tillerman was open. The sides were open. You just hung on. And so I got up in the tiller, and we get back after a couple of runs. I used to hit the radiator every time we backed in, because here I am backing in I think it was a 100-foot aerial. That's a big ass truck. And 139th Street is not very wide. So you really had to, you guys that can do it, you go the opposite way you want the rear end to go. Anyway, So he says to me, here, take these, gave me about 3 or 4 flashlights, the big flashlight batteries. Put them in your pocket. I said, what for? Well, these assholes in the cabs and all up here, they get so close to the rig. Every now and then I lob a flashlight battery up in the air, and it lands on the cars, and it scares the shit out of the drivers. So I did that a number of times, and that was, we had the big sign, keep back 200 feet. Well, that didn't happen in New York. People ignored that.
No, they read your ass. They still do that.
Oh, sure they do. And then I guess society changed and the city changed, and a firehouse was like a beacon, Josh. It was like you could go there for anything. You needed the kids. We used to put air in their
the tires and the bikes. Yeah.
The Band-Aid. You needed something. Somebody was chasing you. The kids ran in. That kind of thing. It was really a community center, if you can understand what I'm saying.
I totally get it.
Open to the public. They loved us. And all around us was 6-story walk-up. No elevator. You walked up. I mean, these were all tenements. And the people, but then you'd hear about, they broke in, they took somebody's shoes from this house and that. And before long, we had to close the doors. And that all added to our response time. Because normally we'd come out, we'd put our boots on, leave our shoes, put on our turnout coats, and out the door we go. We didn't even have to. Well, now it was a different story. You had to raise, and there was no automatic, no electric. Forget electric. You had chains, and you pull these freaking chains to pull up these monstrous doors. The rig would pull out on the apron. You'd have to wait until I forget who it was. It wasn't. It was probably the roof man. He was the last guy on the rig, and he would pull the chain. Now, the fire doesn't wait for us. The fire just burns.
Yes, sir.
All seconds. I know it's only seconds, but it reduces the amount of time, or it increases the amount of time it takes you to get to the job. And those are some of the things that and then they wound up covering our rigs. I mentioned that a lot at night. I have a great book here that one of our friends I met, a volunteer. It's called First Due, and it has wonderful pictures from 1959 to 1979. It was taken by this buff who used to ride around with the 11th Division. That's Bedford-Stuyvesant, Crown Heights, real bad neighborhoods back in the day. And you can actually see in these photos what I'm talking about. None of the rigs were covered, you know. In fact, here it is. Here it is, Josh. It's called First Due. It's probably, you could probably still get it. I believe the man has passed away, but it's 1959 to 1979, and it has just incredible photos.
Oh, wow.
Hard for you to see.
Everybody listening, if you're listening on an audio version, I strongly suggest that you go into the YouTube and check out some of these photos that he's showing, and check out the book. Those pictures are amazing.
It's just amazing, and it's funny how I got it. My lady Chris went to Chicago 2 weeks ago with a friend who is 92 years old, and she has some sight problems. So she went to visit her husband's grave. He had just passed away in January, Bob. So through our tic-tac at night, we found these two volunteer firemen, Lee and TJ. They're from Aurora, Illinois. Well, they drove over an hour to meet Chris, and Chris gave them an autographed copy of our book.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, he lent me this book, which I have to return. And each night on our show, I kind of highlighted a little bit just to show the incredible photos that are in this book from 59 to 79. And I didn't work I worked in Brooklyn those years, but I didn't respond to any of these jobs. But they're just incredible photos. I'll stop for a minute, Josh.
No, you're good. No, I Jerry, brother, I love everything that you're saying. Literally, you're like a new firefighter's wet dream. And I know that sounds weird, but I mean, come on. You are a plethora of knowledge from a city that is, I mean, it's an accolade. It is you want to say you were a New York City firefighter, and you're sharing some of your stories here. And Jerry, I can literally, this whole podcast can just be about you telling stories. I don't fucking care. But no, I do want to kind of take it back a little bit. You know, and I'm going to take it back quite a bit, actually. Growing up, right? And we'll get back, I remember the year. 74 is when you stopped working at 23, right? So you went somewhere else after that. And we'll get back to that point. But I want to take it back to when you were growing up. And the reason why I want to do that, Jerry, is because I want to share with people that prior to you becoming a firefighter, prior to you becoming a police officer, which, again, I'm sorry that you even had to do that, you lived a life. You had a life before the civil service, right? You were a young, early 20s kid, retired from the Navy. You went out, you served during the Cold War on the Navy ships. But before that, even, you were growing up on Staten Island, which is a small community at the time where everybody knows your name. I want to get into like a little bit of the family aspect with you, in that I want to show people that your life as a child probably wasn't all that different from everybody else's life as a child. Right. So growing up, what was the relationship like within your family dynamic? Mother, father, did you have any siblings? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I had a great mom and dad. They taught us a lot of stuff. In fact, I use this phrase that my mother used to say to me all the time. Gerald, it doesn't cost anything to be nice to people. And I've kind of followed that philosophy. I'm 83 years old all my life. And Mom, that was a great message she gave me. And I have two sisters. I'm the oldest. I have a sister, Gail, who I just lost 2 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
I have a sister, Rita, in New Jersey now, and a brother, Kenny, who is 9 years younger than me. He lives outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Back in our day, like I said earlier, it was a quaint little quiet. Everybody knew each other. We all went to the same grammar school. It was just a great time to grow up on the borough of Staten Island. There were farms. When I think about what happened when that bridge was built. It just ruined, and I'm not being critical, I'm being truthful. It just ruined what has happened to Staten Island. But going back to my earlier days, I had a great, we played ball, there was woods. You just walked along and you just picked blackberries off the bushes. I mean, my sister, we had a pond across the street from our house, and it was so quiet and rural, Josh, that my next door neighbor, Richie Mormon, we were pals, and we would sit on our front porch, and we'd have a pad, and we'd play Name the Car. I mean, that's when I think about it now, you can't even walk across Richmond Road. You'd get run over. But back in the day, we'd be sitting there, and he'd say, "Yeah, I think I hear something." Well, let's see, what could that be? And around the corner would come a car chugging along. We'd say, "Oh, what is that? Hey, that looks like a Pontiac." All right, so we write it down. Or here comes a bus. But it was just so quiet, and it was, you never stayed in the house. You went out. I mean, you came home from school, you did your homework, and you were gone. And then we had woods, and we played, and across the street from us, we had a little pond. It was called Frog's Pond. Don't know how we ever got that name. And we would ice skate in the winter there. It wasn't a big thing. And it was just great when I think about the time and the people, how quiet, and everybody loved each other, everybody knew each other. And it was the country. I mean, we were in the city. We were in the city of New York, but we lived in the country. I can't put it any other way. It was, in fact, I tell this story. Our grandmother, Nana Callahan, lived with us, and her son, Jack, Uncle Jackie, he lived out in Annandale. Now, that you might as well have said back then when I was a kid that was Cleveland. I mean, that was so far away. We had no idea. It was probably about 8 miles away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And she would go to the bus stop, and she knew the bus driver, and she would give the bus driver a package and say, "Hi, Joe. My son Jack will be at Arbutus Avenue. Give him the package." And he'd drive the bus out. My uncle would be there, and he'd get the package from Nana. I mean, that's unheard of. I mean, but that's how it was. Everybody knew each other. It was not crowded at all. Maybe we had a car. Now every person in the house has a car. So you multiply that over the thousands of people that have come to Staten Island. But it was just a great, we played ball. We'd find a ball and tape it with black tape. And you'd find a place, we'd play in the street. And there was just so much land that we could play ball and just have a great time. And,
what kind of kid were you growing up, Jay? Were you a little bit of a problem child? Were you more of a mama's boy? You were straight and narrow?
I was kind of straight and narrow. I listened, I kind of not feared my parents, but I had a lot of respect for them. And, I just didn't, I can't think of anything where I really got in trouble for anything. I probably did, but I can't remember. I wasn't a mama's boy. I was the oldest. And I tell you what, being the oldest, man, that was a pain in the ass.
I can relate. I am the oldest as well. I can relate.
I did cutting the grass. I mean, I'm getting big enough. Cutting the grass, clipping the hedges, peeling the potatoes. My God, I'm from a half Irish family. I must have a million potatoes.
Oh man.
Gerald peel the potatoes. I heard that. I can't even tell you how many times, Josh, growing up. And we had potatoes. That was kind of a staple. Nana Callahan, being Irish, we had potatoes a lot. But it was a great way. Back then, we had coal. A lot of you kids out there don't know what coal is. And we had coal. I would be down in the coal bin, and the coal man would come up with the chute, and down the coal would be, and I'd be down there breathing in all that coal dust from our delivery. And then, of course, we had a big furnace in the cellar, and I learned. My father taught me how to take care of the furnace. And then up in the kitchen, we had a potbelly stove. So that's how we heated the house and took out the ashes. So funny, when I went to Ladder 23 in Harlem, that's how back in the day, that's how the firehouses were heated, with these huge furnaces. So the guys didn't have to really break me into how to take care of the furnace. And God forbid you let the fire go out in the middle of the night in the wintertime. Oh, your ass you would have been gone, you know? So that was the most important.
Well, it sounds like you had a pretty, I would say for the times, a pretty average childhood, right?
Yeah.
You were a good kid. You did as you were told. You helped around the house. You're a good kid in school.
Right.
Now, growing up, at some point, you decided you didn't know what you wanted to do for work, but your dad kind of took care of that for you. There, at some point, you said you were in the Navy. What possessed you to sign up to serve in the military? And why the Navy?
Well, I hung around with a lot of guys, and a little older than me, Jimmy Hager, Walter Muller, and they had joined the Naval Reserve. And I hung out, and we'd had a few beers together, and I was like, "Oh, it doesn't sound." And so the place we went to drink, which was rare, the owner was a chief in the Navy. His name was Val DePeppo, and so he got to talking to me and says, "Come on, why don't you go in the Navy?" Blah blah blah. So I kind of got swayed by my friends, and that's when I joined the reserve. And I'm glad I did it. In fact, I went to a couple of funny stories. I went to boot camp, and it was in Bainbridge, Maryland. Now, Maryland and New York City, they're kind of close. But back in the day, that was like the Mason-Dixon line. Maryland was considered the South, believe it or not, back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So off we go, and it's all New Yorkers. And we get thrown into Bainbridge, Maryland. No radio, no, forget about television, and no newspapers. So we're down there, and of course the rednecks, that's what I call the rednecks, they're all breaking our chops, you New York slickers and all that shit. So I'm there about a week and a half, and I'm changing clothes by my locker, and I hear these two Southerners talking about they're going to go see Dr. Pepper or get a Dr. Pepper or something. And I said to them like a dumbass that I am, "You don't look sick. What the hell are you going to see Dr. Pepper for?" Well, I had no idea, Josh, that it was a soft drink. That it was
man, Jerry, if you came down to the South now and said that, you would be, I'd feel bad for you.
I know.
I'd feel real bad. You would be taken to the cleaners and made fun of. And
yeah, Dr. Pepper. So that was one of it took a while for me to, the Southerners got on my case big time. And then when I got out of boot camp, I went up to the gas station where we all hung around, and they were all excited. They were all talking about a thing called Elvis Presley. So I said, "What the hell is an Elvis Presley?" We're out in the woods. We're gone. You know, we were out there for a long time. No radio, no. Don't you know who Elvis Presley is? I said, "No." Jailhouse Gang? Yeah, what the hell are you talking about? Well, I was away when Elvis came on the scene, like the gangbusters. So those are my two kind of funny stories about boot camp in the Navy. And then I went active duty in, I think, November of 1956. And like I said, I served for 2 years on the Vigil. And went to Guantanamo and Kingston, Jamaica. That was it. And Havana, Cuba. So.
Well, I mean, Havana, Cuba back in the day was actually a very beautiful place. If I remember correctly, the hotels, the casinos, it was very, very...
That's where all the mobsters were.
Yeah, exactly. It was their Las Vegas before Vegas was Vegas, right? So that's where they all went. And I can only imagine what it would have looked like back in the day. I mean, wow. Yeah. I've seen pictures. I've heard stories. I watched History Channel, all that other fun stuff. And I probably would have wet myself being able to visit those places at that time.
Beautiful.
When you came back, you were still a banker, but you said you ended up getting married and having a son at the time.
Right.
When, and how did that happen, if you don't mind me asking? And, how did that all play out? How did that play into your decisions for your future at career-wise? Now, it's really hard. I mean, even nowadays, it's really hard to go to a spouse and say, hey, I'm going to pick up this job that's going to take away $3,000 to $4,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to deal with it. Like, most spouses now, doesn't matter who the spouse is, what the fuck did you just say?
I know. Yeah. Barbara knew that I was, that Wall Street was a big deal. I mean, with the money and all, it was nice. But when we bought the house, the house was 3/4 of the way being built when we found it, and it was right near where we were renting our apartment. And then Glenn was born in 1962. In fact, a little Glenn story, call him Glenn Boy. He was born the morning that John Glenn was launched into space.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
February 20th, 1962. And,
is that why you named him Glenn?
Yes, because on the way to the hospital with my father, Barbara wanted, she picked David. If it was a boy, back in those days, you didn't know what you were having.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted Susie because I loved that name, Susie, and she wanted David. Okay, so we go to the hospital, but that morning, before we got to the hospital, John Glenn was launched into space. So Papa and I are talking about it. We get to the hospital, and we had not named our son yet. And I said to Barbara, after reading it all and seeing the baby, I said, look, what about you? I'm sorry, I'm saying she wanted Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Not Dave. Douglas. So I said, John Glenn went up. She said, oh, really? Yeah. I said, so what do you think? How about Glenn? She said, I like that name. And then we had never even thought of at all about Glenn. And so we named Glenn Douglas Sanford. Glenn Douglas Joseph. Joseph after Barbara's father. So Glenn Boy.
I'm glad you didn't name him Susie, because then...
No.
Because the Man in Black, A Boy Named Sue... Yeah, I don't know if you heard that song before. That definitely would have, that probably would have played out.
Yes, exactly. So, in fact, some years later, I am in the press office, the fire department. I'm really jumping ahead, but this has to do with Glenn. The Democratic National Convention came to Madison Square Garden, and so my dear friend Richie Shearer, he worked up in the administration with me. So I said to Richie, I'm going to go on the floor and I'm going to go to the Ohio delegation and see if I can see Senator John Glenn. I want to introduce him and tell him that Glenn was born. So we go into the garden and we go down into the basement where all the media trucks were. And of course, I was in the press office, so I got to see some of the media people that I knew from ABC, CBS, NBC, but I didn't see. So we walked out onto the floor, and I went to the Ohio delegation. And I said, "Where would Senator Glenn be?" "Oh, he's not sitting with us. He's up in the skyboxes." Okay, so I figured, well, that was going to be the end of it. But God is good, Josh. So strolling along, and we happen to go down this corridor, and who comes walking towards us but Ann Glenn and Senator John Glenn, husband and wife, and they come walking, and I had my press credentials on my neck, and I stopped them, and I said, "Senator Glenn," I said, "it's an honor," something like this, "it's an honor to meet you. Our son Glenn was born the morning that you launched into space, and my wife and I named Glenn after you." Well, he probably heard that many times, but he was so gracious, and we spoke to him and his wife for a number of minutes, and he signed my press pass. I still have it, John Glenn. And then about 3 months later, I get a package from the Senate, the Jerry Sanford from Senate, and on the top it had the office of Senator John Glenn. And it was an autographed picture for my son from Senator Glenn.
That is awesome.
Autographed it to Glenn from another Glenn. And Glenn, at this moment, that is on his mantle of my son's house on top of his, it's incredible. I mean,
that's amazing.
His chimney, I mean, his fireplace, that's what I'm trying. His fireplace is the picture that John Glenn signed for me. So that's still, I don't mean to drift, but
no, you're good.
To what you said about having a young child.
Now, look, Jerry, do not say sorry for going off onto rabbit holes and stories. I love going into little rabbit holes and side stories. More than just to hear the story, but because it kind of gives us a look into who you are. What makes you excited? What makes you like giddy? What upsets you? What, pisses you off? Whatever. So these little side stories actually give a lot of your personality as you tell the story. You can see the smile, you can see the excitement, and it's really, really cool. And what'd she say?
She just picked up her blouse and showed me you know what.
Oh, well, hey! That is a first responder spouse right there. Yep. Hands down. I already know it. That is awesome. And I'm glad you didn't do it on the podcast, because I might have had to edit that part out. But I am going to keep the audio in because that is perfect. I might even I might even use that as the opening into the show.
Oh my god.
All right. So, no, she's an amazing. She sounds like a woman I would be with, Glenn. So you better watch out. You better hold on to her because I might come creeping in. Anyway,
all we do is laugh and we have a great time, Josh.
That is, oh man. Anyway, I want to take us back. You have your son. You're married. What was it like, and why did you make the decision to go into the civil service? Did the Navy have anything to do with it? And then why focus on both police and FD instead of just one?
Oh, because Wall Street, I was hardly home, blah, blah, blah. We just found this house, and we moved into the house. And I said to her, look, this is an opportunity. I don't know where Wall Street is going, Barbara. I had been taking IBM courses at night and all, and I was really fluctuating. Should I stay in Wall Street? Where am I going to go? And then Jimmy Rulin, I mentioned earlier, he was an influence. He said, look, why don't you think about taking civil service tests? So I discussed it many times with Barbara. And I said, look, let's see where it goes. And things on Wall Street were, back in the 60s, around there, they were fluctuating. There was a lot of companies. We were in a big brokerage house. We were kind of a small to medium. It was called FS Smithers. And we had heard rumors about their demise. Who knew what was going to happen? Eventually, they did go out of business. So I thought of, maybe I should take Jimmy's advice and start taking these tests. And that's what really, I didn't know, honestly, Josh, what the outcome, what my future was going to be. Here I was 20, 25, 26, 27. And when I finally decided to leave, and when they heard me, you're going to be a cop? I said, I know. My fellow workers thought I was crazy. My parents, now nobody had ever in my family been a police officer or a firefighter. Nobody.
So you were first generation civil service.
Correct. I was the first one. And my father was a career banker. Like I said earlier, I went to work. I was going to be an electrician, but no, I went to work for Bankers Trust. And so I just thought that would be the right decision. So I'm not sure what my parents thought about the idea. I didn't think I kind of thought that I was a little nuts, but I did it. And I'm looking back now. the 3 years in the police department taught me about us, people, and how we can be nice to people, but there's times when we can be cruel to people.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't in my mantra. That's not Jerry. I would never, and the cops, it was a different job, Josh. You had sergeants and lieutenants, and it was really, they had attitude. And I never had an attitude. Maybe you haven't heard, but some people say that the cops have an attitude. Well, it's a tough job, especially look what's going on now.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be a police officer now for all the money. I'd be a firefighter again now. But the cop in New York City now and all these big cities, no, they're retiring at alarming rates because they don't get the backing from the higher ups in the job, especially not the politicians when they want to slash them. And I'm not getting political, but that's just the way it is. So it taught me a lot about us and how you treat people. And I just that wasn't in my bailiwick. And I tell you, the difference in the job. I mean, when you dealt with and you ran into captains and inspectors and all, they really thought their shit didn't stink. You know, they thought they were above everybody.
Right.
And now I switch over to the fire department, and this I remember my first night tour. That's 6 at night to 9 in the morning. I'm in the kitchen. I'm a probie, new. I'm lucky I found the firehouse, 139th. I go in, I bring in my gear. I'm introduced to the guys and the probie. The officer tells me what position I'm going to have and all. And then they ring the bell. Come on, supper's ready. I walk into the kitchen. Now, this kitchen, Josh, dates back to where the horses used to be. That's how old the firehouse is.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to like 1890, way back. And the kitchen is actually where they used to have the horses. Anyway, just a side note. I sit down at the bench, and the food comes out, and in comes this man, an officer. I look up, and on his lapel is an eagle. Now, he's a deputy chief. I mean, I'm a probie fireman. I'm even lower than the cat, And the first thing he does, he puts out his hand, and he says to me, not deputy chief, "Hi, son. I'm Hugh Gormley. Welcome to the greatest job in the world." In fact, I'm trying not to tear up when I think about him. And the difference between the deputy chief in the fire department equals an inspector in the police department. And that inspector probably wouldn't even walked into the kitchen and sat down and had a meal with his patrolman. That wouldn't have happened. And Chief Gormley, I wound up driving the man for a couple of tours. He had a pipe. I mean, I worked with some incredible deputy chiefs in the 5th Division. They were, the bosses I had in the fire department, all over the city where I worked, incredible. The difference between the bosses in the police department and the bosses in the fire department is like the earth and moon. It's just incredible. You can't even, the men, I remember them. I mean, that was, hell, I'm 83. I got there when I was 30. So that's 53 years ago, and I still remember these men's names and how great they were and how they led us into battle against the Red Devil, Mm-hmm. It was just incredible. But the difference in the two jobs, that's what I want to just stress. I just wasn't made out, Josh, to be a police officer. And they do a great job. I have a flag outside my house now, a 9/11 flag with the blue stripe across. I was a cop. I guess I'll always remember being a cop. But it just wasn't for me. And I didn't mean to go on and on. But
no, you're good. I love seeing the emotion you have within the fire department, Joey. Like, we hear the stories all the time about what it is that a lot of us really, really love about the job. And, a lot of people will say, well, it's because we help people. But if you ask a firefighter what it is they love about the job, most of the time, the first answer that they give is the brotherhood.
Oh,
The brotherhood.
absolutely.
And it is bar none. You can't compare it to anything else.
No.
You can't compare it to the military. You can't compare it to
No.
police department. You just, it is uncomparable. These are men
Right.
and women that we are literally giving our lives to if the shit hit the fan.
Oh, without question.
So trust is built fast. Trust is kept. And it takes a lot to break it. Like that brotherhood is, it is stronger than the strongest chain out there. It is something that it is unexplainable.
Right.
Nobody can
has.
actually explain it. Nobody can explain it. But you can see the emotion when you hear that story that you just told. You hear it.
Oh.
You feel it. And I think that's why it's so hard to explain, because it's not something that can explain. It's something you
Right.
feel. It's something you feel.
And he didn't say, "I'm deputy chief." He didn't identify himself. He's a brother. He was an older man. I mean, the man was in his 60s, a deputy chief. That's pretty high. That's a pretty high rank to achieve, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just by and he shook his hand and passed the ketchup. I'm pinching myself, Josh. I'm like, oh my god. I was trying to not get emotional, and all these firemen and it was just like the kitchen. You know, I don't have to tell you. It's like the kitchen. Anything goes, you know. And what I learned there, and I mean, you can go to you walk into any firehouse or fire station and you say the magic words. I mean, and that's it. I mean, you're part of the. It doesn't matter. I just want this book, and then it covered started with a helmet. So this helmet is in 42 truck right now in the South Bronx. So when Chris was finally putting the end of the book together, she said to me, I'm going to get to the brotherhood. She said to me, do you have a picture of the helmet? Oh, shit. No, I don't have a picture of the helmet. But wait a minute. Where are you going to get it? Wait a minute. I pick up my cell phone. I call the South Bronx. And you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking. I said, kid answers the phone. So-and-so. I said, let me talk to the truck officer. The man is on the phone. He says, this is Captain O'Connell. I say, Cap, this is Jerry Sanford from Naples, Florida. I said, you don't know me. I said, but I brought the helmet back up. Hey, brother, he says, wow, what do you need? This is the South Bronx. I'm in Naples, Florida. I said, Cap, I'm writing a book about the helmet. Okay, I said, but I need a favor. I need some pictures. He says to me, I'll send them to you to your phone in a half hour. That's my point. I mean, here I am, thousands of miles away from this man. Never met him in my life, but you know what? As soon as I said the magic word, I'm a retired firefighter, blah, blah, blah. And what do you need? I mean, that's just incredible how we come together, how we help each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't matter. The brotherhood is there for us. And, yeah, I guess that's,
Well, Jerry, know this. No matter how long you've been out of the service, you're always a brother.
Oh, yeah.
Always a brother.
Absolutely.
And I've been talking to you. I've been calling you brother. You call me brother. And our age difference is 50 something years, almost 50 years. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No.
You're a brother. You're obviously, I would love to pick your brain and learn from you a little bit more. And we will do that, by the way, not on this podcast, but I am going to be keeping in touch with you because I have a feeling you can teach me a lot, and I love learning. I mean, because look, you want to learn from the men who became old hats because they did something right.
Right.
So, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit, Jerry, and I'm gonna get into the job itself, right? And we're going to get into the book a little bit later, but I want to get into the job itself and how it kind of affected you. What did it do with your life? How did it affect your life? Obviously, the brotherhood was a huge thing. It was something that you cherished, obviously still cherish, and you will cherish for the rest of your life. And I understand that. But what I'm asking is, we get into the job, and when we get into the job, we hear the stories. We hear the tragedies, we hear the heroics, we hear the saves, we hear the losses, we hear everything in between. We hear how life's like at the firehouse. We hear how life's like with a brother or sister in the department. I mean, we hear stories, but then when we actually get into it, you know, we hear the stories in training when we're going through the academy. This is what it's going to be like. This is what happens. That gives us an idea, but it's never exactly the way the stories are, because when we get in, now it's our story. Now it becomes unique to us, right? What about the job, as you're working, as you're going through your career, how did it affect you as a human being? Not as a firefighter, Jerry. Not as a firefighter. You made it as a firefighter. You can tell, you can hear the appreciation and love you have for this job by hearing your stories, Jerry. And I don't think anybody will doubt that. But what I'm wanting to know is, outside of the job, when you went home, how did that job, what did it do to you? What did it do to your psyche? How did it make you feel being able to go home, go to a friend's house? Hey, what do you do, Jerry? I'm a firefighter. You're a firefighter? Really? Yeah. You say it with pride. Well, yeah, fuck yeah, I say it with pride. So I want to know what that experience was like for you.
It was, back in the day, we were still called firemen when I got on the job. Firefighter, they changed that. When the women, I'm not going to, you can talk about that, when the women came in the job in the 70s. Mm-hmm. But, it was the pride you had, Mr. Sanford, I heard this through the neighborhood. Mr. Sanford, if you needed anything, you went to Mr. Sanford. It's funny. I'm on Facebook with some of my old neighbors' children, and I forgot the stories about me. They were locked out of the house. Their car couldn't start. There was a squirrel in the chimney. There was this, and it was always, you went to me. I'm just part of the, Mr. Sanford was the fireman. And, not that I knew everything, but, jack of all trades, but, and you felt good. I was involved, with Little League, and when my boys, it was just something about being a firefighter. It was just, and then when you put your uniform on, oh my God! I mean, you put your uniform on, and that patch says New York Fire Department, New York City. Oof, let me tell you, it's just your heart wants to jump out of your body. I mean, you are, and I'm not one of those pat me on the back guy. I'm not. I don't look for. I'm just telling you the way it is. When you put on when you get in the bag, as you used to say, and you march in the St. Patrick's Day parade, or you on Staten Island, and the big parade, of course, was up the avenue, as we called it, up Fifth Avenue in New York City, carrying the flag and walking with the brothers and all. The pride you get, and you see the people respond to you. They look at you. Oh my God! I mean, I don't want to get emotional, but the people that I served or worked around in 9/11, I mean, they looked at you like that you just came out of the heavens. I mean, you were there, Oh, it's okay. The fire department's here. It's going to be all right, And I had that happen many times. Accidents around my neighborhood, I'd hear crashes and stuff. I remember years ago, there was a Staten Island Railroad commuter train ran along, and the bells were ringing, and I was like, "What the hell? Why are the bells?" I said to Barbara, something else. I ran right down. It was a block away from us, and a little boy had been run over by the train, and I was one of the first people on the scene, and I'll never forget that. But when we finished wrapping it up, and they took his body out from under the. Of course, the guys came. I just felt a little, I don't know, people looked at me a little differently, you know what I mean? That I was there, and I tried to help. And you all out there, all my brothers, and sisters, When the box comes in, you're out the door. That's what makes our job so unique. You never know what the next call is going to be. Never. You know, the 360 things in life. It could be the cat in the tree, the little duckies in the drain. It could be a fire blowing out the windows. It could be a forest fire. It could be an MVA. Could be anything. But you're thought about and looked at with such admiration and love. I guess that I'm probably, if that's the answer you want, Josh. It's just I was always Mr. Sanford. You know, go to him. He'll and Nancy Hill. I hear from her like years ago. I mean, I haven't heard from her in years, and just recently he thanked me for always being there for her and her brother growing up. You know, all the crazy shit that these kids did. But anyway,
would you say that the job kind of it helped you with your sense of self-worth?
Sure.
With your sense of purpose?
Yes. Oh, big time. Big time. Yes. Yes, it was. And, you know, I always think of Mom because she was in the helping people business. She delivered food. She drove for the blind. She did stuff, you know, and I kind of followed. And I always said to her, Mom, when she was alive, you know, I think we're all in the helping people business. My two sisters are educators. My brother was a teacher. He taught French in a high school. And I've been in the helping people business close to 55 years now. Yeah, it's just a pride that you take in what you do, and you get out there every day. Look, they're down days. Believe me, I probably had more down days than happy days in my 54 years. But you know what? That's what you do. You know? And somebody's got to do it. So might as well. This is the hand that dealt to you. So there's no pity pots out here. Pick up your drawers, get out there, and do the best you can. And do the best you can, and learn from what you do. And I tell we have a fire school here, and I tell these kids two things. Don't tell anybody what we have. And they look at me. I said, you're in school now. You're about to embark on a career that 100,000 people put in applications to be a New York City firefighter. 100,000 applicants to be on the job. So you're in here. You're going to get finished with school, and don't tell anybody what we have. And always leave the job better than what you found it. And I say this to these kids at the North Italia Fire School when I go over there. In fact, I'm the MC. You know, you're never out of the job, Josh. I'm the MC with the graduations and all. And I just love doing it, you know. So
yeah,
anyway,
I don't. The job never leaves you.
No. Absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Nowadays, there's some of us that would retire and the job's done, right? But I think for those of us who, like I said before, find kind of a purpose in life with the job and how it makes us feel and what we do with it, I don't think it's ever going to leave us. Really.
No.
Always. I mean, even if it's just, you know, I retire and my neighbor finds out I'm a retired firefighter or whatever, they're going to come over to me because they know I was a retired firefighter. They know that I know things in certain aspects of stuff. You know, jack of all trades, master at none is oftentimes better than a master of one.
Right.
So, and that is something to be very, there's nothing wrong with pride. No. You know, people say you have to, you know, check your pride. And yes, it can be detrimental if you allow it to. But if you allow yourself to be prideful with the good aspects of what it is that we do, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's not. Not at all.
I want to push a little bit more into going through the career. You know, we talked a little bit about this when I had that phone call with you and I interrupted your lunch, and I apologize for that. No. But we had a little bit of a talk, and, you know, it was at some point, I think you said in the 80s, that the job started getting to you a little bit more than expected, so to say, and that your choices in dealing with what was going on probably weren't the most healthiest ways of dealing with the stuff that we see, that we do. I want to ask, when did you start realizing that the job and life on top of that was kind of affecting you mentally? We're going to get into the mental health aspect of it now, Jerry. And if there's anything you don't want to talk about, or if you're a little bit scared, I understand. If there's a question that I asked that's a little bit too deep, I'd like to pry. But I have a feeling that if I ask a question, you're going to be, you're going to tell me exactly what it is on your mind and how you feel about it. But when did you start realizing that the job was kind of affecting you a little bit on a mental health aspect?
Well, I have to go into my addiction. This may run into your question about the job. I was drinking, not on the job, but I was drinking off duty a lot. Now, as far as the drinking, I'm absolutely convinced it's hereditary. My father had a drinking problem, and so I married Barbara, and she lost her father to alcoholism when she was 3 years old. And just a little history. I'm getting into the heredity part of it. So I married Barbara, and at first I didn't realize, but she was drinking a lot. So I'll cut to the chase. We had two small sons, David and Glenn, and every summer she would be hospitalized because of her alcoholism, and of course it affected my work. I was working in Harlem then. I was in 23 truck, and of course it affected the outlook on my job and what I was doing. And so now she finally gets sober, and I'm starting to drink. I'm like, wait a minute, Barbara, I'm married to a woman that every summer she goes off, when she has to be hospitalized, and the last rites. I mean, it was really bad, Josh. So I found a rehab for her, and she got straightened out temporarily. And then I start drinking. I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing? You have a wife that's, I have to say, she's an alcoholic, and now I'm beating a drum, and I'm drinking heavily. And like I said, the heredity angle. I know my father is now this was in the 70s, and now he's in the throes of it. Anyway, it had definitely affected my job. In fact, that's one of the reasons I transferred from Ladder 23 in Harlem to a closer company in Brooklyn. And I guess you'd call it, I got there on a hardship, because I went down to fire headquarters with my hat in my hand, and I kind of just laid out the program to a lieutenant down there, and I got transferred to Ladder 131 in Red Hook, Brooklyn. But the drinking continued, and for a number of years, both of us, here we are, both of us. She unfortunately picks up a drink again after being sober a number of years, and then she got into the pills. So of course, all of this is affecting how I think. I'm going to work, is what's going to happen, what happens at home. And fortunately, I had my mother-in-law living with us. Anyway, I guess I'm just going to go right into what happened to me with the fire department. In 1983, I remember the boys, we all went out fishing one day, and we came back in, and I was due for starting to work a night tour, 6 o'clock at night. And I was driving a chief at the time in the 2-1 battalion. And I was upstairs doing the manpower, and I was shaking like a son of a bitch. And I'm thinking, God, this has to stop. And I remember walking out to the front window and looking out on Highland Boulevard and looking up at the heavens. And I'm not being corny. I'm just saying, Lord, please just help me. I need help. I felt my drinking was out of control. Here I have 2 children. I have an alcoholic wife. What the hell is going to happen with your life, Jerry? You have 2 boys, and I'm a good father. And here I am, a drunk. So I called the chief and I asked him to come upstairs. And he came up and I said, Donald, I said, look at me. I'm shaking like a leaf. I said, I need help. So he immediately called, and this goes for anybody that's listening to me out there, the counseling unit. I'm sure your departments now have HR departments and they all have help for you, counseling units. Anyway, I went home that night and Barbara said something like, what's the matter with you? What are you doing home? And the next morning, 2 firemen came from a counseling unit and they took me to a place on Long Island for 5 days where I kind of got the crap out of me and then came home, got some clothes, and I went up to a rehab for 30 days. And I learned about the disease a day at a time, and it was called Arms Acres. And I have I have a round disc on my keys that I have carried with me for 37 years on my keychain. I got sober. I listened to what the counselors said to me up there, and this is all because of the fire department. I have to stress that the job saved my life. I don't know. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't the fact that we had that unit that cared about us and sent me away to this rehab. And I came out and I went to AA meetings, followed up with a lot of recovery things. And a day at a time, I stayed sober. Finally, I went back to the firehouse and the guys welcomed me back. And then about 2 years later, I wound up driving the same chief, and I wound up in fire headquarters. And eventually, shortly after that, I became press secretary for the largest fire department in the world. And here I am, a recovering alcoholic. So my message to everybody out there is get help. It's hereditary. I'm saying that word wrong.
It's all right. We understand.
It's, and probably one of the things that stand out when I was up in the press office, I went to the fire commissioner one day, and they all knew that I was a recovering alcoholic. And I said to him, Commissioner, I said, I'd like your permission to take my car up to Arms Acres, to where I got sober, and speak to them. So he said, sure, Jerry. So here the fire commissioner was entrusting me with our fire department vehicle. So I drove up to Arms Acres. I had called them, and I went and stood in front of the students, I guess, or patients. It may have been 75 to 100. And here I was, a recovering alcoholic, standing in front of these people, telling my story. And I don't know what happened to them after that day, but I'm hoping that my story, how I came all those years, a day at a time, I hope that helped people. I hope some people are sober today because of my remarks. I don't go out. I don't speak at AA meetings. I would, in a minute, if I was asked, go. I was a sponsor to a number of people over the years. I even attended Al-Anon when Barbara was hanging off the walls. But I'm proud of what I do, and I'm sober just for today. I'm sober talking to Josh. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I have no idea. I say the Serenity Prayer every night in my prayers. And so there's help. I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I don't know if I answered your question, Josh, but there's help out there. I went away in 1983 to Arms Acres, and this is 2021, and the strides that they've made in that field are enormous. So please, and you're not alone. You are not ever alone. So there's a lot of help out there. Reach out. There are suicide hotlines. Call somebody before you do anything. Call me. I'd be happy to talk to you. Really, it doesn't matter. We all are suffering from a disease. Understand that? It's a disease, okay? I wish I could go out and have a beer but there isn't a drink made that I know of that would have Jerry Sanford pick up a drink, because I know what would happen. I would go back 37 years after that first gulp. I drink water, and I'm a Dunkin' Donut nut, and the world and Jerry runs on Dunkin'. I have my own credit card. Anyway, I know I'm not sure if I answered that question, Josh, but it affected my job. Of course,
Well,
going to the firehouse, knowing your wife, you didn't know what the condition was at home, so it was scary. It was very scary.
You answered the question, but and you answered the question perfectly. There's no right or wrong answer to my questions, Jerry. I asked, when did you realize that the job was affecting you to the point of you drinking? Now, that was my assumption,
Right.
thinking that it was part of the job that kind of got you to start drinking. Again, That was my assumption, right? No, it was life.
Life, yeah.
It was life. It wasn't just a specific thing. Now, hereditary diseases, when we're talking hereditary diseases and mental health issues, addiction has been proven to be one of them. And not a lot of people understand that. And I want anybody listening, to understand. Now, Jerry, I've done a lot of research on the subject. I've done a lot of research on mental health issues. One, because I'm going through my own mental health issues, but two, because of, what we're trying to do with the nonprofit and everything. I want to make sure that I'm giving correct information, or as correct information that I can possibly give based on my research. Alcoholism, addiction to opiates, addiction in general can be and has been proven to be a hereditary issue. Sometimes, even if it is a hereditary issue, we can overcome it without ever actually having an issue with it. But when life gets hard, when life gets frustrating, for you, it was having to have this wife who was battling the addiction herself. And then, what was your outlet? Your outlet was you fell into the addiction yourself, right?
Sure.
And that was an outlet, and we don't think of it as an outlet, but as soon as we start that process, because we have that hereditary disease, it makes it that much harder to overcome.
Yes.
Because it is a chemical want in our brains. They want that feeling. They want what that feeling brings when we dive into whatever it is we're addicted to. When you start getting help for that addiction, hereditary or not, and Jerry, I am going to challenge your thinking in that I do not think addiction is solely hereditary. I think it can be a picked up habit that, if not regulated, can become a disease without ever having any type of hereditary or any type of past family history. So, but when you have a family history, that chemical makeup in your brain is subject to falling into that addiction. Whatever that addiction may be, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, whatever it is. Some people will have that addiction, hereditary addiction, but then they become addicted to cars. They become addicted to spending money. They become addicted. Anything can be an addiction. It's when it starts becoming detrimental to your person and your life, that's when it is a disease, because now you are using it as a coping mechanism to whatever it is you have going on in life. And if it becomes a coping mechanism, that is unhealthy.
Right.
You answered the question perfectly. I assumed it was the job that kind of had you start that dark tunnel. No, it was what you were dealing with in life at home.
Right.
But it did affect the job.
Oh, sure.
You becoming aware of that says something about your character, right? Not a lot of addicts can even admit that they have an addiction, right? Not a lot of addicts can do that. 100% honestly, they're in complete denial.
Not me.
No, and you weren't, but they sometimes they'll be in denial. Like, I don't have a problem. It's just a couple of drinks. There's no problem. I'm fine. But then everybody else in your life is saying, hey, we're noticing that when you do this or when you're off the job, you're drinking a little bit too much. You're acting different. You're being detrimental to yourself and to your life. You're causing issue, but you don't see it that way because your addiction.
Right.
You having the awareness and the wherewithal to realize, hey, there is something going on with me that is becoming a detriment to my person, to myself, is huge, Jerry. And I believe a lot of addicts that start that process, that start that conversation, that finally have that realization that, oh shit, whatever I'm into right now is not good for me and my life. They are sometimes scared to speak up about it.
Yes.
They're scared to start that conversation because they're afraid of what it might do or mean to everything else in life. So they'd rather deal with the addiction than deal with the consequences of trying to fix the addiction because of perceived ideas that may or may not happen. The stigma, right? Don't get me wrong. There are some pretty shitty stories where it could have, Jerry, it could have gone for you. You called your chief up. Hey, I have this problem. Your chief's like, all right, we're taking you off the truck. You probably shouldn't be a firefighter anymore. You should probably think about retirement. It could have gone a million different ways. You know? Oh, you just admitted you're an addict? I can't have you on the truck with my guys. I'm going to go put you in admin for the rest of your career now. Right? Like that could have happened. But here's the thing. It didn't. It actually improved your situation by reaching out for help. Not only did it improve your taking care of the addiction and becoming healthy, but it actually improved your position within the field that you love, which is firefighting. You became a spokesperson. You became a PIO. You became somebody that is looked to and looked up to by battling it. So let that be a lesson for everybody listening here. Do not assume that the fight that you are fighting is going to end up with you losing. That is what I think scares the most people out of a lot of people, is that they're going to start the fight and that there's going to be all these other things that are going to tied to that start of the fight that's going to destroy them even more. And then they're going to fall into deeper. All that's anxiety. Start the conversation. Start getting the help that you want for yourself. I have to be careful in saying need, because when you become aware of your own mental health issues, when you become aware and you acknowledge the fact that there's something wrong, it is no longer a need to get better, because now you're aware of it. Like if I have a broken arm and I'm aware that I have a broken arm, technically I don't need to go get it fixed. I want to go get it fixed so I can continue doing, right? I don't need to get it fixed because I'm aware of it. Now I have to make the choice to go get it fixed. Now, so when you become aware of your mental health issues, when you become aware of what's happening with your addiction, aware with what's happening with your depression, your PTSD, your anxiety, whatever it is that you now become aware of within yourself, now it is a choice that you have to make to go get better. It's not a need. It's not a need. You have to make the choice to go get better. That is on you. Nobody's going to force you. Nobody can force you. Now, if you don't, there's consequences, but there's also consequences for doing the right thing. And those consequences are actions produced by previous actions. That's what consequences are. You do something, something happens in return. If you do something good for yourself, 99% of the time, something good is going to come back to you. You do something bad for yourself, 99% of the time, something bad is coming back to you. Right? So make that choice to become better for yourself. And you did that.
I just like to say this, Josh. I got sober for me. I didn't get sober this is important. I got sober for me, not for Barbara, not for my two sons, but I realized, wait a minute.
Not for the job.
I'm going to die. Jesus Christ. I got to stay sober day at a time, an hour at a time, 20 minutes. That's all, whatever it is. But I got sober for me, not for anybody else. I love my family. Not saying that. But I guess I had a little love for myself because I was on an elevator that was plunging to the basement, and I think I hit the button for the second floor, and I got off. And I saved my life, okay? By listening to those people, by having the fire department behind me, and in fact, before the COVID and stuff, I go back up every year for my 9/11 medical at fire headquarters, and I sometimes run in. I used to run in. I think he's retired now. The man that ran the counseling unit, and he'd get me on the side. He'd say, "You're one of our stars. You're one of the ones that made it." Because it's so easy, and especially nowadays with all that stuff that's out there that you can so easily get addicted to. And but please stay sober for yourself. I know we all have wives and children. We adore them. But really, it's for you. And I wouldn't be here today if I didn't stay sober for me.
And that goes with any mental health issue that you guys are dealing with. Anybody out there that's dealing with any type of mental health issue, be it addiction, depression, anxiety, PTSD, you have to make the choice for yourself first. 100% for yourself first. Take away, well, if I don't fix myself, my marriage is going to end. Take away, if I don't fix myself, I'm going to be a bad father or mother. Take away all of that. All of that does not matter if you are not good for you first and you make the decision for you first.
Right.
Because once you're 100% better for who you are and how you feel, you can be that person for everybody else in your life. You cannot be that person while dealing with the things that you're dealing with. If somebody needs you and you haven't dealt with the issues that you have to deal with yourself, you're only going to give them that 50% good of you, and not the other 50% that's dealing with the issues is going to be ready for you whenever you're done. So you're not giving them 100% of who you truly are. You have to make the choice for yourself first, knowing that you are worthy of being that 100% you for yourself. You're worthy of being happy with yourself. You're worthy of knowing that no matter what, everybody in your life can leave you. Will it hurt? Hell yeah, it'll hurt. But it will not define who you think you are as a human being, as a person. Your worth is not defined by anybody else but yourself. And that is a huge, huge realization when you come to it. Jerry came to it middle of his career.
Yep.
And he reached out and he got the help, and it skyrocketed him in his career because he started the conversation. He let the people in his life know where he was at. He overcame the fear of the repercussions that it may or may not bring. And he realized no matter what the repercussions, being better for himself first mattered more. Right. That is huge. Yeah, I want to say thank you for sharing all of that. And I want to say thank you for telling that story because, like you said, it's our stories of the struggles that we have gone through, the struggles that we continue to go through, that allow people to realize that while their story is unique to them, it's their story. It's not so unique in the grand scheme of things, in that there's somebody that has gone through or is going through a similar situation, and there is a way out. And when we hear stories like yours, it allows us to know I'm not alone in this. The personal struggles that my addiction brings, or the personal struggles that my mental health issues bring to me, yeah, those are unique to me. But the struggle itself is not unique. And it's amazing to hear success stories. I would even say it's amazing to hear stories of failure and then overcoming that failure, or a failure, period. Because every story we can learn from. Again, Jerry, brother, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to push forward a little bit. And you mentioned 9/11. Now, this has to be, if you're, I'm not entirely sure if you were still in the fire department at that time. But even if you weren't, you were there. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart. Now, I did not become a firefighter because of 9/11. I did not become a firefighter because I grew up wanting to be a firefighter. As a matter of fact, I accidentally fell into the job. And when I say accidentally fell into the job, Jerry, I mean I accidentally fell into the job. I started off as an actor, as a model. I used to teach ballroom dance. I worked at a shipyard in California. I was a young kid not knowing what the hell I wanted to do with my life. I came home for like the third time, and my parents were like, you're either going to go to work or you could go into school. If not, you're out on your own. So I was like, all right, I'll go to school. On the way to the school, Jerry, my girlfriend at the time, I had her flipping through the pamphlet, and I told her, look at the certifications, get me a little certificate so I can get a job, whatever. And she's reading them off, and then she says firefighter. And I was like, you know what? That's cool. I like helping people. I like manual labor. Sure, why not? Get to the counseling. She says you should probably get your EMT too. So I start my first day of EMT class. I opened up that book. Hooked. It found me. The job found me. I did not find the job. And I haven't looked back since. There you go. You have always, once you became a firefighter, Jerry, you have always been a firefighter. And you always will be a firefighter. You will always be a fireman. Can you kind of take us a little bit? I don't want to get too involved into the 9/11 stuff, but I want to get your story on what it was that you did and everything else. But more importantly, I want to know how you dealt with all that mental stress without your addiction.
I retired in 1997 from the New York City Fire Department, and I stayed in New York for 3 years. And I went to work for my son David, who had a home inspection business in New Jersey. And he said, "Pops, you don't have to go to any school. You've been in the job for so many years. So why don't you come join us?" So I said, oh, "Okay." So I went to work for David, and that was from 1997 to 1999. In May of 2000, I get, a lot of this is in the book, so I don't want to give away too much of the book. But anyway, I went to a refresher course for CPR at the local high school. And I then found out there was an opening in the fire department here, and I applied, and I got hired instantly because of my last 9 years in the New York City Fire Department. So then a few weeks later, Again, this is all in the book.
Mm-hmm.
The
Just
chief
give us a quick summary. Give us
give me a quick. Okay.
yeah,
I
give us a quick
found-
summary. You don't have to get too
I
detailed.
found an old fire helmet here in Naples, Florida, that was from 1914, from ladder 42 in the South Bronx. And I returned it to the South Bronx the day before September 11th. And that kind of puts the whole thing in perspective. After I got back here to Naples after the attacks, I went back up to New York, and I helped up there through almost the end of October. So as far as my stability, I was going to countless. I knew half of the guys that were killed that day I'd worked with. So about the middle of October, I finally went to the fire commissioner and I said, Tommy, I can't go to any more wakes. I can't go to any more funerals. We're burying all these guys that you and I worked with. So it really had an effect on me. All these years, especially with the 20th anniversary looming in about 8 weeks. Of course, it's probably the worst thing that ever happened in my life. I mean, I look at videos now and pictures, and I have a picture in here in our office that I brought back from the New York Times on September 26, 2001. And it has the pictures of all 343 guys. And I just said this to Chris last night. I still can't believe that this happened. You know, that these guys, everybody was running out, they were running in. And then 2 buildings came down and killed them all, along with 2,900 unsuspected people that get up in the morning and went to work, and they were all murdered on that day. And so it weighs heavy on my heart and my psyche, Josh. You know, I mean, how can you I was with men on September 10th that were dead 20 hours later. Had a sandwich with them and a soft drink. I mean, that's something to I flew out the morning 2 hours before the attacks. I could have been on one of those hijacked planes, you know. So there's a lot of everybody has a little bit of a bag they carry around with them, and but I'm doing all right. I never sought out treatment or anything. I don't know. Well, I guess I didn't need it. I kind of just went along with what I saw, and I saw some horrible crap up there, as well as my other brothers that were digging there. And I mean, there's not a day go by. I mean, that I don't think of, and I still can't believe that it happened. And I saw them being built. When I was going to Harlem, they were building them in the 60s. And then they came down. And so it's just kind of a heavy thing that not only myself, but a lot of people will remember where they were that day. In fact, I remember when JFK was killed. Where I know exactly where I was. I was working on Wall Street. Somebody came running into the back and said the president's been shot. So we all kind of remember. I was too young to remember Pearl Harbor. I was 3 years old, 1941. But I do remember the war being over. I was 7 years old. And I remember we had blackouts, rationing, all that things that nowadays kids don't know about that stuff. And everybody running out into the street and hugging and crying and having pots and pans and banging them and saying a chant, the war is over, the war is over. And those are things that, I mean, nobody in my family went off. One of my uncles went off. He was an ambulance driver in Germany, in the army. But that's a heavy burden. I work a lot now. I volunteer a lot with veterans organizations, and I deal with a lot of World War II men. In fact, we just lost Sam about 2 weeks ago, and the burden that these were kids. They were 17, lied, 16, 17, 18 years old, storming the beaches of Normandy. Can you imagine the balls on these kids? I mean, I can't even think. I've seen stuff and been places, but it doesn't rival. Those one of those Amtrak things went down, and they jumped in the water and stormed the beaches. Oh, I try not to get emotional. I mean, the greatest generation, are you kidding? I can't even hold a candle to those men. Not even trying to, what they did. But anyway, it affects everybody, but you just have to keep your, like I say, pick up your drawers and get out there. That's the hand that the good Lord dealt you. So deal with it, No pity pots, no getting a coloring book and going in a closet and feeling that's bullshit. Stop. Get out there. We are here once. We have one life. That's it. And I'm 83 years old, and I'm going to continue to go out there every day. Pick up my drawers and get out there. And for you folks out there, after your shift is finished in the firehouse, go volunteer. Go help somebody. When you see somebody, you see a veteran with a hat, give him a high ball. Give him a salute. Say thank you for your service. When you see a police officer and a firefighter out there today, it's different times. The country and the world is going through different times. These are uncharted waters that we're seeing. And I don't mean to be an old, but I am, and I'll shut up now. But really,
No. I get it. And I want everybody hearing what Jerry's saying. Put your bootstraps on, get your pants on, go out and deal with the things that you have going. The safe space, the avoiding your triggers. No, what he's saying is if you have an issue, face it head on. Start your conversation. Don't ignore it. He's not saying ignore what you're going through. He's not saying that. He's not saying what you're going through is nothing. He's saying what you're going through needs to be dealt with. That's what he's saying. I want everybody to hear it because, some people are like, they'll hear that old adage, be a man, tighten up those tears, wipe your face off, no, don't show emotion. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is instead of being emotional about it and allowing the emotion to consume you, deal with what is causing the emotion. That's the hand you're dealt. Deal with it. Don't fold. Don't run away. Don't go to your safe space. No. Face what you got going on head on. That's what he's saying. He's not saying hide anything. He's not saying, don't show your emotions. Don't allow it to have you feel. We've seen him get emotional a few times here. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a human emotion, just like happiness. There is nothing wrong with showing sadness. We can show every other human emotion in the book. And nobody bats an eye. But as soon as somebody gets emotional because they're sad or upset, why do we feel that is not a good thing to show? It's the same. It's an emotion. It's human. Jerry's saying, don't allow it to define you. Deal with it. Push forward. He did. He could have allowed his addiction to overcome him. He could allow the things that he had to deal with and see on 9/11 consume him and throw him back into the throes of that addiction. He didn't. He put his bootstraps on, started talking about it, and dealt with it. He didn't forget about it. He didn't ignore it. He didn't not let anybody know where he was at. He started dealing with it by talking about it. By sharing his story and how it made him feel. And Jerry, that, in my book, brother, not only defines you as a fireman, it defines you as a man. You're the type of man I think more men need to grow up to be like. And for being an old hat, and for being somebody that grew up in the generation you did, you are actually a little bit of an anomaly here. In that You are sharing the things that made you emotional. You are sharing the things that made you quote unquote vulnerable. You are sharing the things, you're sharing the stories that damn near broke you, where, and I'm being blunt here, other men from your generation would scoff at you, would laugh at you. Why the fuck are you sharing that, Jerry? Why are you being a pussy about this, Jerry? You're a bit of an anomaly here. And I would say, fuck you. He's not being a pussy. He's not afraid. You're the ones that are afraid. You're the pussy. You're afraid to that people know how you're feeling. You're afraid of showing what things make you feel like. Jerry's not afraid anymore. So who's the pussy? Who's the one that's actually scared?
Doesn't hurt to cry, let me tell you.
No, it doesn't. It actually feels really good. How many stories do we hear about people that will have a crying spell and they just, wow, I feel like a weight was lifted off my shoulders? There's nothing wrong with it. It's emotion. Human beings have them. And anybody listening, guess what? Unless you're an alien or a lizard person, you have emotion. Jerry, I cannot begin to thank you enough for the knowledge, for the stories, and for your time in service to your community and to the nation. And I cannot begin to thank you enough for just being the man that you are and for coming on the show.
Thank you, John. It's an honor, John.
I am sure I'm going to have you back on the show. Of course, if you'd allow me to have you back on the show. You better fucking come back on the show, Jerry. Damn it. I want to give you a chance here to kind of promote what you got going on. Now, we did talk about it a little bit. Your book, it started with a helmet. And for everybody listening, I met Jerry, when I said social media, I met Jerry via TikTok. And that social media platform, for whatever reason, has been huge for the community, is for people in general, especially nowadays during the COVID era. It was a way for us to get out, a way for us to share our stories, a way for us to connect. And Jerry has just got on. He's fairly new to this social media platform, but watching him go live and him sharing his stories and him talk about the book that him and his girl put together, it started with the helmet, has been phenomenal, has been amazing to say the least. Jerry, I want to give you a chance to kind of talk about the book a little bit. Obviously, don't give too much into it. I want people to go out. I want them to get the book. I want them to read the stories. But where did this idea come from? You found the helmet in Naples, Florida. I mean, that's a long ways away from the Bronx. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. A lot of you old fogies like to go down to Florida, and for whatever reason, Florida's like the place to go. And I'm calling Jerry an old fogey, not you, Chris. I just want to make sure I make that clear. I said I'm calling him an old fogey, not you. I just want to make that clear.
I'm over 50 now.
Just about.
Oh, hey, you're within my range.
Well, over the years, I have a very unusual. Everybody remembers that they were on 9/11, like JFK, Pearl Harbor, And I just dismissed it. I said, "Yeah, I know." But I met Chris 6 years ago. Best thing that ever happened to me. And he had, and we'd go to New York. Like I said, I go up there every year for my 9/11 medical, and I take her around. In fact, we even went back to my first firehouse, Ladder 23, about 2.5 years ago, and they welcomed me back in like I was just got off my chariot. I had been there, and these are all young. Anyway, so I would tell her stories, and meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, she had her record button on in her phone. And over the years, she would put all these stories I would tell her up in Dropbox or somewhere. And then back in February, she said to me, "Hey, Grandpa, you better sit down. I want you to read something I put together. We're going to write a book." I said, "What are you talking about?" She says, "Oh, all your stories." So she had put 12,000 words into this book. It's a slim novel about how I found an antique helmet here in Naples, Florida, and I returned it to the South Bronx the day before September 11th. And that kind of sums it all up. Now, it's not, we don't mention the word terrorists. I don't mention any of the terrible sights I saw down at the site. Another nice part about this is through donations, we have also gotten a lot of people interested, educators and teachers. Because for years, Josh, I'm down here and I'm trying to get into the school system in our county, and I was successful once. In all these years, I got in and I spoke to an assembly once. So these teachers now are very interested, and we're going to start to mail these books out to teachers so they can explain or read the book to their students, because a lot of the students, they have no idea what happened in 9/11, Josh. No idea whatsoever. And we've gotten some donations. In fact, for Chris's birthday, which is in May, and my birthday is in June, collectively we said something like this on Facebook to our Facebook friends. This year, we'd like to raise money so we can send our book out to the schools. And between Chris and myself, we raised close to $4,000.
That is amazing.
So that's amazing. And it was just like I said, our network of friends through Netflix, through Facebook. And so that's what the book is. It's a slim novel. I don't really want to go because I can tell you a lot about it, but it's all in the book. And
no, that's totally fine.
You can buy it on Amazon. Barnes and Noble has it. In fact, with TikTok, we've gotten a lot of inquiries from the UK, and we just found out the other night that you can even buy the book in Europe now on Amazon UK. So that's kind of I don't mean to sum it up, but it's just how the hell a man walked into the firehouse down here in Naples and didn't want his father's helmet, and he gave it to us. Now, I find that hard to believe because I have my helmet here that I got in 1968, and it's going to go to one of my sons. And I can't think of, but anyway, they would keep it. I mean, why would you give away your father's helmet? But anyway, that's what this man did. He gave us, fire department here, his father's helmet. And that's what started the whole story. It started with a helmet. So, Josh, I just want to thank you so much for allowing us to put a little plug in for our book. Chris is a remarkable writer. A little background, Chris wrote for many years for the Naples Daily News. She wrote the real estate column, and she's written a lot of articles for a lot of realtor business magazines. So I write stuff. I thought I could write. Forget about it. Being a press officer, no, I can write press releases. I can tell you different things, but I can't put the words in. And she wrote this book. It's absolutely magnificent. So, Josh, it's been indeed an honor. And
Jerry, we're not done.
I know. Okay. I just want to thank you again. Go ahead, my brother.
No, I really do appreciate it. And What Makes Us Fire, please go check it out. You can find him on TikTok as It Started With the Helmet. On Facebook, It Started With the Helmet? Do you have a Facebook page?
Yes, we do.
You do have a Facebook page? Instagram.
Yeah, come on, honey. Tell her. Come here. Come on.
Awesome. All right. Well, there it is. What Makes Us Fire. It Started With the Helmet. Go show this man some support. Check out the book. I can't wait to get it. I wish I would have read a little bit of it before we actually started talking, but I literally got you on 3 days after I contacted you, so I didn't really have a whole lot of time.
Good, yes.
So go check him out. What Makes Us Fire family? Show this man some love. We have a bunch of you out there that are part of this brotherhood that are in the civil service, and it's more than just for firefighters. This book is for civil service members in general. It's for the public in general. Read it and get that different point of view. Get that different story from somebody who was there, somebody who experienced it. It's those stories that give the true meaning of what happened that day. It gives us that. I can't even explain it. Yeah, how hard is it to explain feelings? And it's through stories like yours and through other people that were there that we can truly, truly feel the magnitude of the event. Jerry, we're going to start closing this out. And the way I usually close this out, the show, is I usually ask 3 questions of my guests. And, the questions, there's no right or wrong answers to the questions. It can spark another 15, 20-minute conversation. I have a feeling with you, it's probably going to be the latter. But I love your stories, by the way, as I can talk to you all damn day. My first question, Jerry, is if you had a podcast of your own, and we'll call it Started with the Helmet Podcast, why not? But your guest was yourself. What's the one question and or piece of information you would have asked yourself or wanted to hear that maybe we did not touch on?
Well, that's hard. That's hard, Josh.
I get that a lot when I ask that question.
I've been very open. I mean, I'm not a closed book. I like to share. If I share, sharing with people, I hope they learn from, generations back then. I mean, I kind of don't remember my older uncles or father, passing on any of their, I'm just trying to find out something about where we came from, back in the day, So I don't know. I'm that's tough, Josh, to answer that question. But I guess just be honest, be yourself, I mean, when I first got I never think that I would be talking so openly about my sobriety. And again, it's just for today out there, just for today. Okay, forget about my 37 years. It's for today. And I don't know, Josh. Be good to yourself. Come on, be good to yourself. I don't know, Josh. I guess that's it. I don't know what else I could say.
When did you realize that was the mantra that you needed to take on? To be good to yourself?
Well, I don't know. Over my life, I guess. Sometimes you have to be, you do for other folks, but there's times you have to be, I guess to be good for yourself was when I got sober. I know I had to get sober for, I wasn't getting sober for Barbara or Glenn or David. I was, man, I was, and I was scared. I was a very scared man back then, Josh. I had 2 little boys, a wife that I didn't know what I would find when I came home from the firehouse. Thank God I had a mother-in-law that lived with us and that was being abused by her own daughter. And I'd come home to a house and I remember taking, this is very painful, walking David to the bus stop the first day he was going to kindergarten. And there I am on the bus stop in our small little neighborhood, and there's 3 or 4 women with their children. You know how I felt? I'm a man and I'm holding David's hand. I was like, what the hell are these people thinking, Because Barbara was somewhere, and I was taking David to the bus stop. And boy, I tell you, I never forgot that, and I kind of learned about that. But yet, with all her drinking and carrying on, I picked up a drink. So come on, you know what I mean? Here I would think, how can you ever get? I mean, I didn't get as bad as she got, but I was still a drunk. Come on, I was hiding bottles. I used to say to myself, why are you hiding a bottle? Because I was right in the throes of my disease. That night I'd say, wait a minute, I got to make sure I got enough booze for tomorrow, and if I didn't, I went out for some stupid excuse, and I wound up with putting booze somewhere around the house. I'm like, wow, I'm just following exactly what she's doing. And I don't know how I even got to this, but being afraid. Here I am, working miles and miles away from the house, and anyway, that kind of sums it up, Josh.
Jerry, I'm glad you came over that fear.
Yeah.
I'm glad you stared in the face of what scared you the most, and you took the steps to defeat it. We can equate that to a working fire. We can equate it to the 343. They stared in the face something that I could only imagine would instill some type of fear because of the unknowing.
Right.
But they overcame that fear and they went in.
Yes, they did.
You overcame your fear and you went in.
Yeah.
No matter what the outcome was, you were going to fight.
Right.
And that's huge. And I applaud you for it. And I thank you for sharing that story. My second question to you, Jerry, is a very simple one. Do you have any questions for me? Like you, I'm an open book.
Right.
I am the kind of guy that wants to kill the stigma of talking about life. I'm the kind of guy that likes to kill the stigma of talking about the uncomfortable conversations, because the uncomfortable conversations don't need to be so goddamn uncomfortable. So, whatever question you have, I will answer. The only ones I won't answer is if it has to deal with somebody else in my life, because I don't have their permission to talk about or give my opinion on what they think.
No, Josh, you're very candid. You're very blessed to have the opportunity to come on and speak with you and your following. I don't think I have any. Maybe what pushed you into this form of because when we spoke the other day, I was like, wow, PTSD. Okay, I mean, the average interview, or I don't do a lot of them. I haven't done a lot of them. Doesn't bring that up. I find that very interesting, and that's great that you have thought about this field. There's so many people out there struggling.
I'll tell you, Jerry. I started the podcast. My first episode was on August 3rd of last year. And I started the podcast for the sole purpose of, quote unquote, humanizing the badge. Basically, I wanted to share the stories of everybody that was in a civil service field and their families. I wanted to give the points of view of who they were outside of the job. A lot of people tend to forget that we're more than just firefighters. We're more than just cops. We're more than just military personnel. Because before all that, we were living a life just like anybody else.
Yeah.
I like to say we're normal people that do an abnormal job.
Yes, sir. I like that.
That's all we are. We are normal people doing an abnormal job, and we choose to do it. So I wanted to start sharing those stories. Through the course of me starting this and getting stories, I reached out to some fairly big wigs on social media. I don't know if you've heard of Jason Patton. He is with Fire Department Chronicles. He's the bald guy that makes all the funny videos about EMS and firefighting. If you don't know him, he came onto the podcast. He was my 4th episode. He came onto the podcast when I only had a following of like 300. But he was another firefighter helping another brother firefighter by giving me some exposure on his end. And I was able to share his story. During that conversation with him, mental health came up and his advocacy for that. So I started getting the idea. And during all this, Jerry, I was battling depression and still am, but I was starting my process to battle with my depression, with my anxiety, and with my PTSD. All of which stemmed from not the job, but from something that happened to me when I was younger. When it got real bad on September 20th of last year, it was a Sunday. I remember it. I remember everything about that day because it was a day that my depression damn near took my life. It started a domino effect that leads me to where I am now. With my family, with what I started with the nonprofit, with the podcast. So after that day, I started going to therapy a lot more, and I talked to my therapist, and I asked her what or if it would be a good idea to start sharing my story on social media or on the podcast. And the reason why is because I was actually searching for other people, and once I got the diagnosis of severe depression, I started researching. Jerry, I started researching anything and everything I could about depression and how it affects the mind and anxiety, PTSD, and how it can affect the human mind. Because I wanted to defeat this. I want to defeat this. I'm tired of having the thoughts that I have. I'm tired of feeling the way I feel. And I want to beat it. And social media, TikTok, had an aspect of it where people were sharing their stories. And it didn't make me feel so alone anymore. While what was happening to me was unique to me, in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the story, I wasn't the only one that dealt with depression, even though it felt like it. So I started sharing my story. And when I did, the outpouring of support, but more than that, the outpouring of people telling me that I helped them by just sharing my story, I knew I couldn't stop. I was helping others and brothers and sisters start their conversation. I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten of people telling me that I helped save their lives.
Great. Great, brother.
And so, from that, I shifted the focus. Let me rephrase. I didn't shift the focus. I added to the focus of the podcast of not only am I now still wanting to get the purpose of the podcast in that we're normal people, we're just doing an abnormal job, but now I focus a lot on the mental health aspect of what we do. And not just on the job, but as human beings that deal with these things and still decide to do the job that we do. And how we can overcome it. And how we can not make it so stigmatized. And then through that, I started the nonprofit, the What Makes Us Fire Nonprofit Foundation, which is a foundation that helps our civil service members, be it military or first responder, active retired veteran, and our volunteers, get inpatient mental health treatment. And we do that by making sure finances are not a deciding factor, because finances were a deciding factor for me. I realized very quickly I could not afford an inpatient mental health facility. Not just the direct costs I couldn't afford. I couldn't afford to miss work. I couldn't afford to be out of work. I work overtime to support my family. I work a second job. At the time, I worked a second job to support my family. I couldn't forego that. And if I made that decision, I know I'm not the only one out there that has had to make that decision. And that was a blow. I found this facility that I thought would be able to help me. And then finances said, too bad. And there's nothing out there like this nonprofit that doesn't subject you to just one place or the other. You can go wherever you want. We're going to take care of your family. We're going to take care of your bills. We're going to make sure that you, as a brother or sister in the civil service field, are going to be taken care of. We're going to take care of your family, because when you come out of that facility, better for you and for you first, like we talked about before, you can be that person for not only for your family, but for the community that you serve. And that is why I started. And that is why I'm doing what I do.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you for that question. Not only did it allow me to share with you why I started this, but it allowed me to plug a little bit of the nonprofit. If you're interested in learning about it, you can go to WhatMakesUsFire.com. There you can see what we're doing. We're creating a peer support network as well. We're creating a mentorship program. We always hear about the sponsors for addicts, but you don't hear a whole lot about sponsors for people that have depression or anxiety or PTSD. Somebody that they can call when they start feeling like they're about to have an attack, some type of mental health attack. So we want to create something that's for everybody, not only just addicts, but for everybody that's battling a mental health disease. And we're also creating a motivational speaking platform where people like yourself, people have overcome or are overcoming their mental health issues, can go and share their stories in person. It's a way for the nonprofit to raise funds for itself, but people will purchase tickets, come hear your story, and be able to talk to you one-on-one. Not just via social media, not just via text or a phone call, but they can come sit in a seat, listen to about three or four different speakers, share their stories in hopes that you start your conversation for yourself. And that's what it is. So thank you for that question. I really do appreciate it. My last question, Jerry, and then we will sign off. You are on the What Makes Us Fire podcast. Now, obviously, yes, I use the Maltese cross. I use the helmet, the set of irons as my logo. However, What Makes Us Fire is not necessarily subjected to just fire. What I mean by fire is what gives us that fire. What pushes us to do the job, to make the sacrifices that we make. What is it within us? What do you think it is within us that keeps us going to do what we do?
Well, the helping people and the excitement, like I said earlier, we never know what the next call is going to be. And that's what makes our job so different than others. A lawyer goes to work, he knows he's going to court. A doctor knows he's having I just to the doctor today. He knows he's seeing patients. But we have that whole circle of life of all different situations. And it's just a great feeling when you can probably 90% of them are down calls, but we have to deal with them. And I think God was good to me. He led me, and I had no idea when I was growing up. No idea. I had always had respect for policemen and firefighters. Always will, always had. But I never thought I'd wind up in this profession. But again, I had a great person to look up to. That would be my mother. Always helping people, going here, driving, the blind, the Red Cross, Meals on Wheels before it was even known that she would take. So I guess it was something inside of me was the fact that I wanted to help people. I remember being in the Navy. They were always asking volunteers and doing this, and I always was there. I always stepped up. As we have that expression in the firehouse. You're going to step up? Yeah, I did. I think I stepped up my whole life. And that's the good I feel about walking away. Every Monday, I volunteer in a pantry here in Bonita Springs, where just yesterday, Monday, we had about 15 to 20 cars come, and we distribute food to people that need food. And I get in the car and I come home and I'm like, wow, that was great. You just something. You're doing God's work. You're out there helping people. So I guess that's what I get from it.
And I understand that sentiment, obviously, because if we didn't like helping people, we probably wouldn't be doing the job. I guess my question goes a little bit deeper than that, Jerry, is where did that feeling come from? Where did that want come from? Because the reason why I'm saying this, Jerry, is that how diverse is the civil service field? We are so diverse, so many different types of people, religions, colors, creeds, genders, sexual orientations. It doesn't matter. There are so many different types of people within the realm of helping people. Yet you take them out of that job and you put them in civilization, they clash, they fight.
Yeah.
But you put them into the civil service realm and they're your brother, they're your sister. Doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with their lifestyle or political affiliation or ideas about whatever, because you both know you are there to do the same job. And you both know you are there that when the shit hits the fan, I am going to be there for you. It doesn't matter. So where did we find that, I guess, ability to break it down to the human level and forget about everything else?
I don't know, Josh. That's a tough question. What drives us, or what? I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer of where it comes from. I guess it's your inner soul or something to, I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for that. Really, I'm trying to dig down and think of I guess just help our fellow man. That's it. I don't know.
Hey, that's okay. It's
okay. I don't know where I got it from, Josh. I don't know.
It's okay. And it's okay because you're not the only one. You're not the only one. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I don't have a direct answer for that as well. But in saying all that, Jerry, brother, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for opening up, for sharing your emotions, sharing your history, sharing your advice. I promise you, what you have to offer to this world is not over. Is not done. Not in the least. And I cannot wait to get the book. I cannot wait to see the further things that you and Miss Chris are going to do, what this book is going to do for both of you. I am extremely honored to have you as a friend and as a brother.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. It was an enormous opportunity. Thank you to meet you and to share my story. Yes, it's and there's nothing like the brotherhood. I can Just leave it at that. No matter where you can go all over the world. Just a quick sidebar. We were in Switzerland. We were looking for the fire station, and the woman behind the counter in the hotel said, "Why would you want to go to the box?" I said, "What's a box?" This is in St. Moritz, Switzerland. We finally found the firehouse. I knocked on the door, and a man came. He could just about speak English, but I said the magic word. "I'm a firefighter." His eyes got like pizzas, and he opened the door. I'll just leave it at that, Josh. No matter, it's across the world.
Well, same way. I was in Paris, France. I did the exact same thing. Knocked on the door and said, "I'm a firefighter," and they just opened the doors. It was. Oh yeah, that was it.
We're loved around the world, and I love all of you out there. Please.
All right, Jerry. Thank you again. What Makes Us Fire family? This was Mr. Jerry, co-author of It Started With a Helmet. Co-author of Started With a Helmet. Y'all go check out the book. Check him out on social media with It Started With a Helmet. Y'all have fun. Stay safe. Remember to show some love and peace out in the world. Be the change you want to be. Don't let the world dictate how you want to see that change. Be better. And remember, nothing in this life worth having is easy.
Right.
Keep going. It's worth it in the end. And I'm going to add something here. Mr. Jerry's mother told him when he was young. It costs nothing to do something nice for someone. Let's keep that going.
Right. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
You too.
What did I tell you about his stories? I want to thank Mr. J. Sanford again for coming on to the show, sharing his stories, and giving us a look into the past and what it was like being an FDNY firefighter back then. I mean, come on. That man has some stories, and I cannot wait to pick his brain a little bit more. What Makes Us Fire? Please get out there. Check out the book. It Started With the Helmet. You heard him. You can find it on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble. It is an amazing book. The story of him returning the helmet the day before 9/11 and then him going back to help. It's a pretty amazing story. Jerry, thank you, brother. It's that time of the show where I tell you all thank you for listening. Thank you for following What Makes Us Fire. If you are not following What Makes Us Fire, please subscribe to the audio hosting site that you're listening to the show on now, and or you can follow us on all our social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, with the tag at What Makes Us Fire. Also on Snapchat, just to let you all know. Also, if you want to watch the show on YouTube, it is What Makes Us Fire space podcast. What Makes Us Fire is all one word. If you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate. You can email me at whatmakesusfire@yahoo.com. Just give me a little bit. I will get to your messages and I will get to your emails. Also, the What Makes Us Fire nonprofit foundation. If you would like to learn a little bit more, check out the events that we have coming up, which, by the way, we do have an event coming up on October 15th through the 17th in San Antonio, Texas. It is the What Makes Us Fire TikTok Riverwalk Takeover. We will be taking over the San Antonio Riverwalk. Y'all, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, go to whatmakesusfire.com. There you can learn about the nonprofit. You can donate, which we're looking for reoccurring donors, and you can sign up to be a part of that event. Get your lanyard, book your hotel, meet us out there, and have a good time. If anybody out there is finding themselves in a situation right now, in a critical situation, they need somebody to talk to, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 100% free, anonymous, and confidential. Give them a call. Start the conversation. The number is 1-800-273-8255. Again, the number is 1-800-273-8255. If making that phone call is just not right for you right now, that's okay. Check out suicidepreventionlifeline.org, where you will find a multitude of resources for you to start that conversation with yourself and in hopes for you to get better in the long run. We here at What Makes Us Fire are not sponsored by the National Suicide Prevention Hotline or suicidepreventionlifeline.org in any way, shape, or form. They're just two resources that are for general purpose use that we truly believe in. And saying all that, like I said at the beginning of the show, thank you. Thank you for showing me support. Thank you for being there for me. And thank you for continuing to listen. Without you, I don't know where I'd be. And for that, I'm grateful. What Makes Us Fire family. Stay tuned for next week's episode. We have a man, T.R. Jones, a man that's in the farming industry, which I know you guys don't really know a whole lot about the farming industry. And why would I have a farmer on the What Makes Us Fire podcast? Well, we're about mental health and we're about life. And you'd be surprised to learn that farmers actually hit a higher suicide rate than first responders. And we talk about that. Check it out. Much love to y'all. Have fun. Stay safe. Peace.